During the course of this presentation, we'll cover periodic engine and chassis maintenance, engine removal, engine overhaul and component reconditioning, and engine assembly. We'll also cover carburetor service, electrical systems operation and troubleshooting, and we'll finish up with fork rebuilding.
During this final portion of our program, we're going to review front fork reconditioning. In order to allow a clear view of the fork removal procedure, we've removed the fairing from the bike you're going to see. Removing the fork assemblies normally would not require complete fairing removal.
After removing the front wheel, fork brace, front fender, and brake calipers, separate the plunger cases from the anti-dive housings. Bleed the air from the forks, loosen the upper pinch bolts, and using your 17mm hex drive, loosen the fork caps. After loosening the lower pinch bolts, slide the fork down and remove the rubber damper, air joint, and circlip. The fork assembly can then be removed. Remove the cap, spring spacers, and spring, and drain the fork oil. Using a small screwdriver, pry the dust seal from the fork housing, then remove the oil seal retainer clip and the washer. With the caliper mount bosses clamped in a soft jaw vise, use the damper rod holding tool and remove the rod securing bolt. The fork tube can now be pulled from the lower housing along with the taper spindle, damper rod, and spring.
As a rule, any time you've disassembled a fork unit, you should at least replace the fork seal. With this type of fork, you should also inspect the upper and lower bushings. If they're worn or damaged, replace them as well.
The damper rod should also be inspected, and each component should be cleaned thoroughly. For reassembly, in addition to the damper rod tool, you'll need this seal driver and its 40mm adapter. Start reassembly by fitting the rebound spring onto the damper rod and sliding it into the fork tube. Before fitting the taper spindle, install the two wave washers, one on either side of the plane washer as shown. Install the fork tube into the outer housing using the damper rod tool to hold the damper rod in place. Apply Loctite to the damper rod bolt. Make sure the copper washer is in place. Then torque the bolt to 2 meter-kilograms, or 14 foot-pounds. Next, install the upper bushing and lightly tap it into place. Then fit the seal seat washer. Before sliding the seal over the fork tube, wrap a piece of light tape over the snap ring groove. This will eliminate the possibility of damage as the seal is being pushed over the groove. Again, using the seal driver, tap the seal into place. After installing the plane washer and the seal clip, push the dust cover back into the outer housing. Pour 400 cc's of high-quality 10-weight fork oil into each assembly and install the springs. The proper assembly of the spring and spacers is as shown. After installing the fork cap, the assemblies can be refitted to the chassis. Reinstall the circlip, and after applying a light coating of lithium grease to the air joint O-rings, slide the assembly over the fork tube. Be sure the top of the tubes are flush with the upper surface of the clamp. Torque the lower pinch bolts first, then the cap bolts, and finally the upper pinch bolts.
That concludes our review on fork rebuilding and our venture maintenance and repair program. As I mentioned at the beginning of this program, we don't expect anyone to absorb all the information we've just presented simply by watching this program once. What we'd like you to do is review the tape of major repairs we've covered. It'll help you do a better job, and it could save you some time. The bottom line is, we want you to be able to do the best job possible for your customer. He's invested in the best tour bike money can buy, and it's up to us, Yamaha and you, to make sure he's completely satisfied. Since our introduction of video training, we've had several mechanics comment on the fact that since our switch from live schools to video, you haven't had the opportunity to complete a test and receive a certificate stating that you're qualified to service a particular model. Well, this time you'll have that opportunity. Sometime in the near future, you'll be receiving a copy of a test dealing with the material covered in this program. It's a multiple choice test, and you're going to have to do some research and a good deal of thinking to achieve the 90% grade you'll need to pass. When you've completed the test, send it to the attention of the service department at our head office in Toronto. We'll review and grade it, and assuming you've scored 90% or better, we'll forward your certificate.